And we are live for the first time in 2 years or more, possibly. I told Zach, who's already on the chat, that I would probably be very awkward in my introduction, and I think I'm already living up to that. But it's nice to be back. It's really awesome to be back with our good friend Zach from Kent Falls Brewing. I'm honored to have him on the show, and we're gonna talk to him for like an hour, maybe more, depending on how things go. Uh, just like old times, just like old times. So, for those of you who are watching, I'm happy to be back, and thank you for watching again. And you're in for a treat with Zach. So, Zach, what's up, man? How's it going?
What's up, Marco?
I told you I was gonna ask that first, too.
First question's a doozy. That's what you said.
It's a tough one. I always try and start hard so that we can set the expectation level and work our way down from there.
Well, let's
So
just talk about existentialism for a minute.
we can for hours.
Hey,
Hey, last time I was interviewing somebody, I would just dip my toes in the water for the brewery, and it was like, oh yeah, a year from now we'll be open, and it'll be cool. We'll keep the blog going, and that hasn't happened.
That's what everybody
But
says.
yeah, exactly. But enough about me. We're here to talk about you. So, where are you at right now?
Like emotionally.
Yes.
You want to talk about emotions right now? No, I'm in my apartment.
Well, you're in Kent, right? Or you're outside of Kent, but you're
I'm in Connecticut.
yeah. What's the weather like up there?
It snowed this morning, and then it was just generally cold with some wind.
How does that impact? I mean, this is a boring question, but how does that impact like brewing operations day to day for you guys when it gets down like that?
So, I mean, we're on a farm, and you've been up here, so you know, but a lot of our stuff has to go in and out a large garage door. So if we're dumping shrub out of a fermenter, if we're graining out, it goes into a big hopper, and so the door is open for some period of time, cools things down a bit. We're building a new barn right now to like alleviate cooling some things that shouldn't get cooled down. But yeah, I don't know, man. It sucks.
I mean, when I was there, it was what, June, something like that.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean, like the weather was perfect. It's like you don't need an AC. Brewing with the door open is just amazing. So, like, how much of the year is that versus what you're dealing with now?
What it feels like versus what it actually is are two different things. I made it through my first winter up here. I started in January, my first year, and they were like, "Congratulations, you made it through your first winter." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And then next year hit, and I was like, "Oh God!" Like I know exactly what they mean. It usually starts around now. I think it's a little late this year, and then it will go until like end of April. So it's a long time. We'll get lucky breaks here and there, but most of it's mud. There's a mud season up here.
Ugh.
It's a new experience for me.
And for those of you who haven't been to the brewery, I mean, it's the buildings are detached, the tap room's detached from the brewery. The new where's like how far is the new barn going to be from the current facility? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like you've got to walk outside and do. It's not just like there's a heater on and they're walking. It's like legit feeling the cold out there.
Yeah, you gotta dig yourself out from time to time. Like it snowed really bad a couple weeks ago, and in order for us to do pretty much anything, you had to like plow the pad off, hand shovel. So after shoveling yourself out in the morning of your own apartment, you get to the brewery and you're like, oh, cool, I gotta do this now.
Shovel myself in. That's awesome. So what's uh-oh. You freeze? 1 second.
Before
Ah, you're back. Bear with us. Uh-oh. We're waiting on Zach to get back online. So while we're waiting on him to get back online, we're going to talk about it now. But I'm drinking Danny Boy, which is a Pilsner. I'll give you the actual description. Hop accented, unfiltered German-inspired Pilsner. It's about 5% alcohol, and it is all beauty. We're going to talk about Pilsners with Zach. Zach has a pretty huge love and adoration for the style. So we're going to get into that a little bit. And also, we're going to drink through this IPA. It is called Okay Then. And it's about 6.5. They call it an Imperial Pale Ale. So we're going to talk about that. But Zach's got an incredible ability to take these styles and make them his own, and he's incredibly focused on balance, and that's what you get in this Pilsner. So it's just a beautiful beer. There's zero like distracting factor in this beer. It's just straight up. It's just delicious, and we got a couple questions about that, and we're going to go through those questions that we got. But if for those of you who haven't had his Pilsners, haven't had his pale ales, his IPAs, definitely worth seeking out. What kind of connected Zach and I was farmhouse beer, and his farmhouse beer is just amazingly beautiful. There's a beer he does called Medio, which is just gorgeous. It's got this like really beautiful minerality and brightness to it. So we'll talk about that beer as well. I'm sure Zach lives out a ways away from the brewery. When I talked to him first, he described it as the middle of nowhere. So there's a little bit of probably a internet problem going on right now. Let's see. Yeah, if you see that, it's just beautifully clear. I mean, this is kind of weird lighting. It's just it's just so beautiful. It's earthy. It's got that nice hop accentuation, um, that kind of herbaceous grass, a little bit of grassiness there. Um, there's a yeast profile. It's just so present and beautiful. It's just an awesome beer. Again, it's a Danny Boy. Seek it out.
Hey.
You're back.
Sorry, there was a gust of wind, shut down the internet.
Nice. I was telling people that the first time we talked on the phone, you told me that you were basically out in the middle of nowhere. So I said, there's probably an internet issue going on.
Pretty much.
So, yeah. All right. So let's get back into it. I don't know where I was. I was talking about your beers, specifically this one. So maybe we just talk about this one for a little bit.
Sure.
So I'm currently drinking Danny Boy.
Well, look at that lacing.
That what?
Look at that lacing.
Oh, I know. I made sure to show this when I was talking about it. It's such a beautiful beer. There's such like a, if you allow me to talk about your beer for a second, there's such like the yeast profile is present and gorgeous. There's this really nice kind of like subtle hop accentuation. I think you call it a hop accentuated pilsner. So I'm stealing your words. But it's just so like, it just adds this like nice little level of brightness to the beer. And it's just the way I described it was there's just no distractors. It's just easy to drink. It's straightforward, but it's just beautiful because of the fact that there's no distractors to it. And I know that you're huge on balance. And I think this beer hits that. Can you talk about the beer a little bit? What it is, what's in it, and what you were going for?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very simple grain bill with Pilsner and a little bit of wheat. And this batch, we did a step mash to give it a little bit more body. And it is hopped in the kettle and slightly dry hopped with Hallertau Mittelfrüh and Kalista.
Nice. So if you see it again, it's a beautiful color. That doesn't do any justice with these Christmas lights behind me. What inspired the beer?
Wanting to drink beer, I guess.
I mean, I'm laughing, but it makes sense because this is one of those beers you can drink a ton of.
Yeah.
And easily. And it's a beautiful beer. I know you love Pilsner. I know you have a big passion for the style. What brought that about?
Well, Dan Suarez is an hour away from us. So, I hadn't really had a whole lot of exposure to great Pilsners prior to living up here. So having the ability to drive it an hour out of the way and just visit Dan and drink his beers, and it really is just something special when you're doing that. So wanted to kind of capture that myself. And this one specifically, like Danny Boy specifically, my attempt at doing a qualify inspired beer. Even though I'm a Palatine guy, a lot of people like qualify. So I was like, oh, I'll make a Kent Falls version of qualify, or at least inspired by qualify.
Cool. That's Dan is doing some amazing stuff, but let me tell you something, this beer is just gorgeous. And I just re-poured and I'm still getting lacing on the re-pour. It's such an awesome I love that. I love it. Well, we'll get back into more of the beers, but I kind of want to get back. I want to get into you a little bit of your history in brewing for a little while, and then we'll get into the IPA and talk about that I've got here sitting next to me. But I mean, you've been brewing for a while now, and you've got a little bit of a history of brewing at different breweries. You know, without, I guess, without me getting too in detail, you want to give a little bit of your, I guess, your path to Kent Falls?
From the start.
Yeah, why not?
Well, I was born on a warm summer morning in a small town in Greenville, Pennsylvania.
I should have known that when you said from the start you were going to do
Yeah. So I graduated college and had been drinking craft beer here and there, trying to be fancy, balling on a budget, as they say. And
that. What were the kinds of beers that were fancy then?
Dundee, which is just like owned by Genesee, and it's just as good as Genesee. You know, Southern Tier had popped up; they were nearby. Voodoo,
Yeah.
So it was like Voodoo was mythical, and you heard if you walked into an alleyway at the right time, and you knocked on a door, that someone would answer it and be like, "Hey, do you want to help us bottle?" And you'd help them bottle, and then walk away with a free case of beer. And so I ended up doing that one time, and the machine had broken that day, but I still walked away with like a half case of beer,
Nice.
which is cool. But that was like one of the first times I had gotten to try Voodoo. But they opened up a pub as soon as I graduated, like the summer after I graduated, and I walked in and asked them if I could have a job after a couple of years. And you know, I was like writing for Runner's World at the time, so I was making some money, and I was living in my parents' basement. And I was like, I'll work for free. And so I ended up getting a call and helping out on the bottling line, and just went from there, really.
I forgot about the running stuff. Don't you have a statue sitting next to you somewhere, or not a trophy sitting next to you somewhere?
Yeah, it's you know, an NCAA trophy,
That's right.
third place team in the nation, you know, cross country, 2009.
I forgot about that. That's Look at that. Look at that, people. Not only can he brew, he can run.
Used to be able to run.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So Voodoo. So you get the Voodoo. When abouts did you get the Voodoo?
2012.
So we're 6 years away from Voodoo right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a bit of time in between there. What kinds of things were you brewing at Voodoo? Were you?
I wasn't brewing at all. I never touched the brew system there.
Okay.
I started working in the kitchen, actually, and then like helping bottling, and just kind of fell in love with like the whole atmosphere and the Kurt Smithall, like his methods, and just how passionate he was about it without being like a nerd. So it was just, I really wanted to get in there and to help him in any way possible, and learn as much as I could. So any opportunity I could, you know, that was offered to me, I was jumping at the bit. I was working crazy hours, and started in the kitchen. Ended up running the kitchen for like a weekend because our chef left like all of a sudden, and I was like, I don't want to do this. So I turned down like the head chef job, and in favor of like working more in the brewery, and I was washing kegs, and then I finally got to like filling kegs and learning how to like CIP tanks at this place that we were contracting, and I like helped somebody brew a beer there, and I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. And I met some people through like Voodoo bottle releases that lived in Richmond, and they were like, we want to bring you down, it'd be really cool. Mekong, which is a craft beer bar down there, is opening up a brewery. You should come down and check it out. My brother just moved to Virginia Beach, so I ended up going down there to visit my brother and see if, like, you know, maybe this is a place I'd want to live, and popped up to Richmond and just had like an incredible night drinking incredible beers. And then was offered a job at the Answer as an assistant manager and beer buyer. And I was there for like a couple months, and the brewery wasn't built, but then I helped Brandon build the brewery. Somebody else was supposed to come in as an assistant brewer, but then he didn't want to do it. So then I was like, I want to be the assistant brewer. So I became the assistant brewer. as well as beer buyer and assistant manager. Did that for a year. Left on some
soul searching.
Yeah. Wanted to join the Navy after that. Didn't really like craft beer. Got really burnt out. So I went down to Virginia Beach, and Commonwealth had just opened up, and so I was helping them do some stuff.
Biggie.
All while I was training for the Navy, just getting in like really good shape. And so I moved back home. I was there for like a year and a half, something like that. And I moved back home to make my life as miserable as possible as a 27-year-old. Moved back in with my parents. Took the 4 a.m. to noon shift at Tim Hortons. And worked out, after that. And then Voodoo needed some help. They were building their production facility. And so I was, working 4 a.m. to noon, helping Voodoo with whatever they needed to get done, just like running glycol lines or whatever, and then trying to work out after that. And I was like, this is just like, I can't sustain this. And I was like, maybe brewing isn't that bad. And so I just randomly found an article. It was the Draft Magazine's top beers of the year, and Voodoo was in it for Man Bear Pig. And I was flipping through the pages, and I just like happened to stop on Kent Falls, and I was like, oh, this place sounds pretty cool. So I just sent them an email with my resume, and sure enough, they were looking for a brewer at the time. And interview went well. And
the rest is history.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, what burned you out? You want to go? You go from brewing to I want to go to the Navy. It's a pretty like.
I mean, it's still something that bothers me. I mean, it's something that I'm still passionate about. Not like joining the Navy, but it's like the health detriment side of brewing and beer and overconsumption, and just how easy it is to fall off the path of being healthy and eating healthy. And especially for us as brewers or people in the industry, it's generally free. So it's a stressful industry as well. Like, it's not, you work long hours, you get paid very poorly, but you get free beer. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to compensate. I want to go home and forget about today. I'm going to have like 2 or 3 beers. And then all of a sudden 2 or 3 beers turns into like 8 beers. And you're like, oh shit, I have to wake up at 6 in the morning. And then that just adds to it, because then you're stressed out because you didn't get enough sleep. And then, it just builds and builds and builds. But it's easy to take the easy road and just be like, oh, I'm just going to drink a beer because it makes me feel good right now, rather than thinking about the long-term health or just like tomorrow even.
Yeah, this is something, Sean, I had not intended to go down this path, but since you brought it up, I mean, this is something I read an article about Sean Hill's struggle with this and his commentary on this, and it's an issue, right? I mean, you're starting to see breweries starting like run clubs and workout clubs and things like that. How prevalent have you seen it become, or how prevalent is it in your opinion, this kind of overuse or abuse?
I mean, it's rampant. It's absolutely, everyone does it. I do it, or I used to do it. I got so burnt out when I was in Richmond. I mean, I was like, I'm overweight from where I want to be right now. And not that I'm overweight, but I was like 40 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I was in Richmond for a year, and I was really fit and really healthy before I got to Richmond. And so like that was like to the level that I was doing it. And you're the hub, it's so much easier when you're the hub. Breweries are hubs for people to come. And so, yeah, you might be there every single day, but a new person comes in Monday, a new person comes in Tuesday, new group comes in Wednesday, and you're there and you're like, oh, I'll have a beer with these people. Oh, I'll have a beer with these people. And you just do that over and over, and you're like the center of this hub. So for you, it's much more of a grind. It's much easier to be on that grind of being unhealthy.
Yeah, especially a place like The Answer where you got people coming in all the time.
Yeah, it was like 7 in the morning one time. Somebody brought like KBBS, You know, it's like, oh, cool. Like, I'll just drink this KBBS at 7 in the morning because you got off your shift like 30 minutes ago and you're ready for bed. But it's like, I'm starting my day right now. But I'm not going to turn down a rare beer like that, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, but it seems like people are becoming aware of it now.
I think they are.
It's it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad, but you can see it. I mean, it is stressful. I'm not even open yet, obviously, and this is the most stressful thing I've ever done. I mean, it's like sleeping with a mouth guard and grinding through it type of
Yeah.
stress. So it's
I think the biggest issue is that, I mean, while it is becoming more uh, well known that this is an issue, it needs to be the other side needs to shine a little bit more of like, hey, like I maintain my balance of my life because I do this. Like I think Mikkel does a great job with like his running club, and he's fit, and he's like always promoting on social media that he's running. He's never really like putting up pictures or Instagram videos or stories of him just like partying all the time. And that's a lot of our lives, like any festival we go to, it's a lot of drinking, but it's not like he's putting that up all the time. It's like, hey, I'm going for a run. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing that. That's healthy. And I don't think enough people do that. You know, I don't know why, but it's not something like showing that we party all the time isn't helping anyone be like, oh, that's not a life I want to lead. Like, who doesn't want to party all the time? Like, if it was healthy to party all the time, everyone would do it. But it's not. It's not. There has to be a balance to life.
Yeah, that's it. It's striking. Look, we're going back to that word balance.
Let's just start saying dichotomy.
Full circle. Yeah. So I mean, you go from the Answer to Kent Falls, a completely different brewery. Is it philosophy based to make this decision? Is it change of pace? It sounds like it might have been a little bit of that. I guess what kind of drew you to Kent Falls? I mean, it is, as an outsider going to Kent Falls, and I'm going to say this, just, sitting there and, coming up with a beer with you and going and executing it there and kind of being a part of that with you. It's a really romantic kind of place. I mean, it's I kind of wanted to hug you the whole time we were. No, it's just a beautiful place, and you can get kind of swept away by the fact you're driving in through this road with the trees covering you, and there's like hills and stuff, and there's animals. And was that part of the decision to leave to go to Kent Falls? Is that why you left to Kent Falls?
Not really. I mean, not really.
So what was it that brought you away from the Answer? Because the Answer, what is kind of one of the more well-known names in the country. So you think, Well,
the Answer, it was not my decision to leave. It was definitely, and I'll be very open about that. Like, it's not something that I'm ashamed of. Like, I wasn't the best employee. That's a fact. I was very entitled, and I didn't really work well with others besides Brandon. So it wasn't brewery side at all. It was more just like frustration dealing with front of house. And that's on me. Like, it's not anyone else's fault. Like, I was just like not ready to be responsible adult at the time. And I was trying too hard to like prove myself. And then again, drinking myself into a hole, which is beneficial now that I have a wide palate for good beer because people kept bringing it to me. But I'm happy that I went through that because I learned how to deal with different circumstances in different work environments. But the reason I came to Kent Falls is because I needed to get away. I wasn't being who I thought I was. I was or am. And I needed to like get away from everything and everyone. Like, I didn't want to go back home and be coddled by my parents. Not that they coddle me, but like, it's just too comforting, and you fall back into your old ways. Yeah. And I just wanted to be an adult, and I wanted to find my maturity and just be alone and figure out what I was doing with my life. You know, I was just like all over the place trying to figure things out, and came up here to like reset, refocus, and then attack. You know, find my goal and then go after it 100%.
I'm happy you just said that. And I literally wrote. So I sit here and sometimes I write notes about stuff that I kind of want to get to. And with you, one of the things I wanted to get to, I literally just wrote it because I forgot to write it earlier, was you've got this incredibly calm demeanor almost at all times, but you're incredibly intense. Meaning, yeah, you see, you laugh. You got a personality where, like, if you're gonna do something, you're gonna do it 100 and not even 100%. You're gonna figure out a way to do it 150%.
Yeah.
And that kind of weaves its way through your life a little bit with in brewing, where you're at, you know, I need to stop. I'm gonna go to the Navy. I need to stop. I'm gonna just completely reset and move myself to the middle of Connecticut.
Yep.
Does that find its way into the way you choose to produce beer? Meaning, like, the way that you approach your brewing process, that kind of like that kind of all-in intensity.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that I'm not the easiest to work for or with, you know, when I became head brewer, like I know I'm hard on the other guys because they're not me. And that's not fair to ask other people to be yourself. Like I'm very methodical and very mechanical when it comes to like in the terms of like being a machine, where like I hit the same gravity every time, or you know, between two turns, it's like I do this and this is the exact same way every single time. So in that sense, yeah. And then in planning and figuring things out, like I've learned how to tone that down a little bit because I've burnt myself out more times than I can count. But yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. The beauty, it's like the beauty of Kent Falls, right, is that you've got this really kind of phenomenal setting for farmhouse beer, and then you've got the other end of the spectrum being covered too. You got these beautiful pilsners, you got IPAs, you do a lot of hoppy beer. Starting to dabble in some of the darker beers. But I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that at least what I feel sort of like the farmhouse stuff may be a reprieve from some of the intensity. I mean, it's beer that allows you to be a little bit more less mechanical, more allowing the process or the ingredients to be expressive versus
it's definitely more yeast driven. So you're not doing most of the work or trying to force something to conform to your idea. You're just letting something be what it's going to be. And so it's going to vary more batch to batch, but that's also very frustrating. And I mean, Kent Falls hasn't really produced consistent mixed firm stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time that we're really doing that, where it's like, all right, we've got this emmer beer and we've got this buckwheat beer, and we're going to make this beer once a year and we're going to have it consistently available. And it's like, how do I make batch 1 taste like batch 2 and batch 3 taste like batch 2, and just like all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, it's yeast driven. Like, you know, the water is different during the time of the year because we're dealing with the well. So it's just, that's frustrating to control, but you know, you gotta learn to let things go.
Is it difficult for somebody like you who's incredibly intense about process and consistency to deal with these beers? I mean, you know, kind of the set it and forget it mentality versus the I'm going to touch every single process along from the second I've got wort being produced to the second I've sealed that last package.
Is it what?
Is it difficult for you to like let go? Is it difficult for you to go, I'm going to accept the fact that these beers may vary. I'm going to accept the fact that these beers, you know, and you might have touched on that a little bit, but like,
I will say yes, and also no. Yes to the first part, to the actual question, and then no to the explanation. So yes, that it is difficult for me to like just let it go, and no because I'm just constantly like, all right, I've got these different sets of variables that I have to deal with, and I have to end. I have to end with this product, and how do I achieve that? And so you have to go about it in a whole new different way. Um, and so, you know, obsessing over that of like, how do I get this to taste like this? And you're just kind of like rolling with different variables, but creating a similar product. It's cool. I mean, it's
Yeah.
difficult, but it's cool.
Yeah. I
Challenging.
mean, that's the one, you know, I don't want to talk about myself in this interview, but that's the one thing that worries me a little bit is am I going to make myself expect completely consistent results on those types of beers? But at the same time, like I was somebody who had, you know, kind of being frank, I guess, is somebody who dealt with a lot of OCD issues years back. And so the idea of producing farmhouse beer was something that was so, the idea of it was difficult for me to grapple with. But once it kind of helped me mentally outside of brewing to like just like accept the fact that, hey, I'll taste you months from now and let's see how you go.
Yeah, dude, it's hard putting things into barrels too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I just want to taste it every day,
I know, I know. Well,
expecting it to be different. And I'm like, no, it's the same as yesterday. Like, why don't I just wait, you know, another 2 months? So I limit myself now, where it's like having that, like, I've learned that sense of maturity of like, all right, I won't touch this barrel for 3 months, and then like I won't touch this until this day, or rather than tasting it all the time.
yeah. Well, you got enough stuff keeping you busy. I mean, you guys are doing really well, so you've got like lots of responsibilities. Otherwise, it might be easier now to forget a barrel or two every once in a while.
I never forget my babies.
So halfway through your story, I apologize, but you chuckled, and that's because I made a weird face. Not a weird face, a face of holy crap, this thing smells amazing. This IPA. Look at that thing. I guess we'll take a little kind of like a side sweep here and talk about this guy. Okay, then. Let me see the label here. That's our beer music.
Oh, I was wondering what that was.
So I'm going to have you talk about this beer too, but it says Imperial Pale Ale.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that before.
You've seen it before, you just didn't recognize it.
Okay.
An Imperial Pale Ale is our IPA. Since we don't ship beer to India. It's a pale ale. The grain bill is similar to a pale ale, just higher in ABV, a little bit more hops. That's about it. And we don't ship it to India. Once we ship it to India, you'll see India Pale Ale on our labels.
You know, there's this thing that people talk about all the time. It's this idea that if you write pale ale on a beer, it could be the same beer. If you write pale ale versus IPA, IPA will always sell better just because you say IPA.
Yeah, double IPA does the same thing to IPA.
Right. And it's odd. I mean, what is that? Do you have any thoughts? You have thoughts on everything, so I'm asking you this.
I think it's just alcohol percentage, to be honest. And I think if you make something taste, if you make something taste more drinkable, but it's supposed to be less drinkable due to alcohol content, then people think it's better, and so then they want more of it.
It's easy, more bang for your buck.
Also, that it's economical.
So what's the story with this beer? It's obviously hazy. Again, this is not doing justice to the color. It's pretty good. But I opened the can. I was opening it under the table, trying not to like cause noise so the camera would not switch over to me while you were talking. And I could smell it coming out from under the table, hitting me in the face.
Yeah.
God, that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the beer? It's the aroma's ridiculous. And it's just crushable. It's got a nice like body to it. It's like a little creamy, but it's just so like so easy to drink. What's the alcohol? I think it's like 6.
6.5.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't drink like a 6.5. It does in body, but not. This is weird. It does because it's got a nice like. It's got a substantial body to it, but it drinks like a 5.5 almost. It's just like, it's got this nice like. I don't even know how to describe it, but those are the types of beers that I like. But what can you talk about the beer a little bit?
Yeah, it's a beer that I made selfishly for my 30th birthday. We've never used Nelson hops before at Kent Falls. I've only used them one time at The Answer. And I wanted to do something for all the people that support us throughout the year as my birthday gift to them. So some friends in Tennessee, I asked them if they got a contract for Nelson, and I was like, hey, like we've got Galaxy. Would you want to trade? It's for my 30th birthday. And they were like, yeah, that'd be great. So we traded 44 pounds of Galaxy for 44 pounds of Nelson. And we were able to make this. It's Citra Nelson, flaked oats, flaked wheat, malted wheat, and then local two-row, all local. So all local grain. Fermented with our ale blend.
I know you use a blend. Exactly, use a blend.
Mm-hmm.
And is it 2 or 3 different strains? Is it how? I mean,
it used
how
to
many?
Be 2, now it's 3.
It's 3 now.
Mm-hmm.
What did you? So so people don't realize, I guess, that these hazier IPAs have. I mean, a lot of what gives them that character is yeast driven. You can make a beer hazy with a standard West Coast yeast strain, but it's not giving it that character that you get with some of these other yeast strains. So what were you looking for in building? This is kind of sort of based on a question that I got for you through email. But I guess what are you looking for when you're developing an IPA yeast blend? If I'm making any sense, like what are the characteristics you're looking to create, and how do you get there with these yeast blends?
Just flavor, the esters that they provide, and how they play with each other. I'm not used to doing blends whatsoever. That is something that was unique to Kent Falls when I got here, and something that Barry is really passionate about maintaining. And so, I'll find a new yeast strain that I'm excited about because I've drank this beer with this beer with that strain, and I'm just trying to I want to see how this plays with the other ones. And so really it's just trial and error. It's not like I have a yeast bank and I've made a million different beers with each blend. It's like, oh, I like these 2 together and I really like this one. So let's try them all 3 together. And it ended up working really well. But then, finding a way to not allow one dominate over the others, or allow all of them to dominate the beer. So you're doing fermenting a little bit colder than I normally do. I'm trying to mitigate those esters or intense esters, because one of them is really intense if it ferments a little bit warm, and it just dominates the beer.
That's interesting. I've noticed too that one of the tweaks that one of the tweaks I made to our beers, these hazier IPAs, was tweaking the temperature process throughout fermentation, temperature schedule, and it makes a big difference. Mm-hmm. And so I'm happy to hear you say that, because that validates me.
So glad I can validate
you. Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying this beer. So I guess I want to go back into a little bit of the word balance again, because this is something that every time we talk, it seems to come up, right? And for a beer style like IPA, I'm interested in hearing your take on this. But for a beer style like IPA, I've argued in the past that I agree with you. Balance is incredibly important. With a beer style like IPA, it becomes a little bit more confusing how important balance is to me, in that this is a beer that is supposed to be hop forward. The hops are supposed to be the star of the show, and yet in these beers, we're trying to display yeast character as well.
Mm-hmm.
Struggle. Maybe that balance plays itself in better into these hazy IPAs versus the traditional kind of West Coast style IPA where it's just enamel ripping IBUs. But have you given thought to that, the word balance in terms of IPA and what you think that means?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think about it all the time. I've probably said it 50 times.
That's why I asked you. I figured you had.
Yeah, you make a beer and then you get to try it throughout its life, and you have to be really honest with yourself while you're doing that to understand, or at least glean some knowledge off that. It was like, how can I make this better? Is this something that I would want to drink? Is this something that I would want my mom to drink and my dad to drink? And just finding a way to like sit back, think about it, and figure out how to improve it, or how to build that balance, or how to build it to be a little bit more drinkable, and then try it. And then when that fails, you try something else. And then when that fails, you try something else. And then you realize that the first failure wasn't actually a failure at all. You just tweaked it so that it did this instead. And then doing this thing transit the beer to this way. And then it's like, oh, doing these together creates a whole different flavor profile. And so just figuring all that out, there was a lot of trial and error, basically.
It's difficult a little bit. Maybe if you're brewing the same beer, like let's say Cigar City's got High Lie, and the High Lie has to be High Lie, right? To make these variations. At Kent Falls, are you guys brewing the same beers consistently, these IPAs, or is it a little easier because you brewed it, in January and you brewed again in July, and you can tweak a little bit more than maybe somebody who is putting their beer on a shelf at a grocery store, and people expect that every Saturday when they do their groceries, High Lie is going to taste like High Lie.
We don't have a core brand. It's not something that we have to do all the time, but we do have beers that we make, 2 or 3 times throughout the year. So just, I also have the benefit of, transitioning from Derek being the head brewer in July, I think officially it became.
I think, yeah.
It was like right when you got there.
Yeah. June, July.
Yeah, maybe it was June. I don't remember. But, it's like putting my unique twist on the beers. And so it's like, yes, we have a beer called Super Sparkle, and it contains these hops, and like that's basically it. That was my guideline, and it was like, all right, I want to make it my way, and like have my flavor match up really well with the Kent Falls flavor and the Derek flavor, but just be better or more approachable or more anything, so that people would appreciate it a little bit more.
That's got to be pretty cool, because it's not many people, I'd imagine, not many people get to go from assistant brewer to head brewer and go, yeah, that beer that people came and bought all the time, I'm changing it to make it more like what I want.
Yeah. It's scary. It's scary, but I've always believed that I was capable of doing it, and I had my own palate that I trusted in, and it's taken us to some cool places. And I'm glad that I'm being that it's paying off, and that I'm not a fool in trusting myself. Because sometimes, people are telling you you're wrong, or they're telling you something else, and you can choose to believe them, or you can choose to believe yourself. And sometimes they're right, and sometimes you're right, but just deciphering that. And I've hopefully chosen the right way to go. I don't know. The beer tastes good to me, so that's all that really matters.
They taste good to a lot of people. and it's tasting good to me right now. I'm still blown away by the fact that I was literally underneath the table that I'm sitting at, and it's coming out from like underneath the table up at my face. The aroma as I crack that can open. I mean, it's pretty awesome. Is there anything as people are trying to brew these beers at home, or maybe there's other assistant brewers that want to become head brewers someday are watching that might take away from anything you would give them to take away from this in this style of beer as being something maybe they need to figure out a little more to tweak in their own way? Meaning, like, what are the factors that you think may be the most important for brewing this style of beer?
Most important thing. There are a few things, to be honest. Don't be afraid of using a touch of crystal malt. That's something that I was always told to stay away from. Like, don't do that. New England style, like, we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do that. And then as soon as I started adding like a hint of it, but not like we went too far with some beers, which by too far is like, we went like, I don't even know, like, I'm just making up a number, but it was like 2.3%. And I liked it more at like 2.2%. You know, it was like something super small. But like, don't be afraid of using a hint of that. Aroma, this is something I learned from cooking. Aroma can be thrown away. So like when you're cooking, you know, if you can smell it, that aroma is losing its potency whenever you put it in front of somebody. So it's the same thing with beer. So don't let, when you're carving these beers up and you're force carving them. Also, there's something to be said about the homebrew method of top-down pressure and building carbonation that way, because you're not really blowing off any aroma. And then, oh yeah, beer only has so much potential to create foam. So if you want lacing, and if you want head retention, and you want like big frothy meringue head, like, be gentle with it.
Treat like a baby.
They are your babies. They are.
I've got more lacing again on the IPA. That's something that we talk about too, and it's funny because it's the head retention and lacing is so important. Why is it so important to you?
It's just aesthetically pleasing. Like, it's, for me, and I know I've talked to Evan Watson about this, and he's against this, but I think beer's art. And
wait a second. Evan says he's against beer being art.
Yeah, it's a craft to him, which I see. I understand that.
But wait a second. We got to talk about this. I'm happy you brought this up because I have gotten in arguments about this too. I mean, if you look at beer, even as a craft, I mean, I get it if you're one of these guys that looks at beer as a 100% mechanical process. Let's just say you're at we'll just choose a macro brewery, right? And you're pressing a button, and you're pressing this button, and you're pressing that button, and the beer is doing its thing, and it's the same exact thing every single time. But someone like Evan, to not think that it's art where he is...
You know, he's the most artistic of all the brewers in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what is his rationale? And
I don't know. It was so long ago. And I don't, you know, he talks a lot, so it's like, just going to choose what I hear.
I love that guy.
I know.
I love him. Yeah, but I absolutely think beer's an art. How could, I mean, go with me here. I don't know if you agree with me, and we can have this discussion if you want, but you know, it's an art just as much as any other art form is. Meaning, it is, you know, Picasso chose different colors, right, to make certain emotions be expressed or certain things be expressed, right? He was all his art was just making conscious decisions to display a certain outcome, or to evoke a certain feeling. And aren't you doing that as you're choosing, especially with your farmhouse beer, which is why it's shocking to me to hear Evan argue with you on that, especially with your farmhouse beer, where it is a little bit I mean, unless you disagree, but I don't think you do. It is a little emotional to create these beers, in that you are creating something that is a little bit outside of your control. You're at a little bit of the mercy of other living organisms to create things along with you. Um,
I think
it,
art is something that evokes um, emotion and like memories in people, and if you're able to do that, uh, then I think that is art. I guess that's a very
yeah,
simplified version of what I think art is, but
yeah,
um, yeah, it was cool. Like one time I gave my dad one of my beers and he was like, "Is there wheat bread or white bread in this?" And I was like, "No, just a bunch of wheat." And he's like, "This like took me back to my mom's kitchen and her making this type of sandwich." And he's like, "I tasted that sandwich when I drank this beer." And I was like,
that's
"Cool,
awesome.
glad you think my beer tastes like a sandwich." But it was the bread
That's
aspect of it.
awesome.
Um, that like it just evoked this memory in him, and then he was like with his mom for like a brief moment again, and it was just like that is the reason that I make beer.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's art. I mean, I've stood in front of La Guernica. Again, I'll use Picasso as an example because he's a well-known name, twice. And I remember each time I stood in front of it. And I've drank beers at Hill Farmstead in the
Hmm.
snow and stood out there. And I remember the emotion of doing that. I remember the feeling of like, this is amazing. This makes me feel fantastic. And this beer is so purposeful and driven. And I can sense that. And, you know, maybe they benefit a little bit from the environment, not with Hill Farmstead. I mean, I've had their beer sitting in a garage brewing other beers and being like, this is phenomenal. But the idea is that there's this taking me from here to here process. And it's just like any other piece of art, whether it's music, sculpture, painting, whatever your favorite form of art is. Um, and so I guess we're going to use this. I want to transition into the farmhouse beer because at Kent Falls, when I was at Kent Falls with you, I think I told you 50,000 times, like I could come here and be inspired every day to brew these beers. It would just be amazing versus me, where I'm going to be like in a warehouse, you know, um, going out to this place just makes it even more art, which is why shocking to me that Evan doesn't think so. But, like, does it help? I mean, does the environment that you're in at Kent Falls help you help you kind of get in touch with what you want to produce? Are you driven by the environment at all?
Not really.
No? Oh my gosh.
No, it is nice to step outside and kind of like refocus and calm yourself. Um, it's a great aspect of it, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really
You're taking it for granted.
maybe, but I don't know. There's just like there are other like bigger farms, not even bigger, but just like our malt producer. We use him for pretty much well, almost all of our beers right now. Um, and like he has this amazing story to tell, and like I get more inspired by that and learning the history of different types of grains, and then like having him grow that, and then finding a unique way to use them. Like who else is making Emmer beers? And we have an Emmer IPA coming out soon. It's like because he bought a flaker and is able to flake Emmer. It's
Yeah.
like no one does that. Nobody does that. But he's the oldest. His family owns the oldest farm in America and has maintained that. Like they've been a farm before America was America. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. Is that the guy that drove up in a pickup truck and
Yeah,
dropped off grain while we
yeah,
were
exactly.
See, that's amazing. I mean but that's part of that's I guess that is part of what I'm talking about is the environment of Kent Falls. You have your grain producer coming in a pickup truck and dropping it off outside. So it's not necessarily like nature, but it's part of the environment at Kent Falls.
That's true. Reducing
It's
our
inspiring.
yeah, we try to use as local as possible, and that's cool. I mean,
Why is that important to you? I mean, it's important to me too. But for you, what is the value of local?
uh you know, it's beer is very self-serving in the way that we consume it and overconsume it and whatnot. And if you're able to not only just uh, have your entire staff and like your immediate employees uh, be able to live their lives and pay them, but also support local agriculture and then keep those farms alive and keep other people um, supporting their businesses that they have passions for, rather than just doing vertical integration, just owning everything yourself. Like you're not supporting anyone but yourself really at that point. So it's cool to be able to see how you're impacting the supply chain just by producing a beer.
It's cool. I think it's I you know I I think that you are so okay. So full disclosure, when I went to brew with you, I stayed at his house, and the second you walk out, you see woods and this beautiful sun coming through the leaves. I think you're just too used to that at this point, man.
All I see are ticks, man. They're just they're ticks everywhere up here.
It's incredible. It's incredible out there. I don't mean to like overstate this. It's incredible out there, and I just I hope you're appreciating it. Appreciating it.
I
Let's
do.
get into farmhouse beer.
Sure.
You know, because that again, that's very local driven too. I mean, the beer that we did together, you spent a full day picking flowers for that beer. 2 days picking flowers for that beer.
Not even just flowers, but the petals, not petals off of dandelions.
You see, I think you're downplaying how inspired you are by this area, because the fact of the matter is you did that for two full days.
Well, I mean, it was like a couple hours each day.
Oh, but still, you know what I mean? That's a pain in the ass.
It was terrible.
And you did it. And it was 2 days of your life that you went out to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, when it comes to the farmhouse beers, again, what, and this is kind of going back to some of the questions I got online, but what is your primary inspiration to going into those beers? And then how do you go about trying to achieve balance in those beers? Because I've had a bunch of those beers, and holy moly, they're up there with the best of the best. And I've told you this off the camera, so I'm not blowing smoke up his ass here. But what goes into your thought process going into that beer, and then what goes into your thought process when you go, I'm going to go out and look for this, or I found this. How am I going to make this play into something in the brewery?
I don't know. You just start from the ground up. Like, what do you want to highlight? What don't you want to highlight? It's like usually it just starts with an idea of discovering a grain that Barry has been reading about, and he's like, "Hey, what do you think about triticale, or what do you think about emmer?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what is this thing?" And then do a little bit of research on that. I'm like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." And like, there's a history behind this grain, and it's like, let's highlight that. So you do a simple grain bill with a significant portion of that like cool grain or cool whatever that you're going to use, and then water treatment is water treatment. It's mostly just water from our well, so we're just dealing with we've really dialed that back. We used to do like heavy-handed water treatment, and we have since pretty much removed all water treatment from our farmhouse stuff, and just like allowing our well to be expressive because it's unique to our farm and our farm alone. And then we have our native culture that is from our farm, and we throw that into the beer, and it does its thing, and it's you just watch it go, and you taste it throughout, and then you blend to however you want the beer to be.
Is your culture mainly derived from local bugs?
Yeah, so it was just our like a spontaneously cultivated yeast harvest. And then when Eric from Casa Agria came out and he had spontaneously inoculated pitch as well from an avocado ranch, and we blended that together. And the way that those interplayed together was just so beautiful. And I asked him, I was like, "Would you, excuse me, would you be okay if I continued growing this yeast and just like seeing how it develops?" He was like, "Yeah, just send me bottles." Which is like cool because that's what, like in traditional farmhouse breweries over in Europe, that's what they would do. Their yeast would die off and they'd go ask their neighbor like, "Hey, could I get some yeast?" And then they're just like sharing yeast. And so we were able to do that across the country and maintain our friendship through that, which is cool. And like, it's totally different now than from when we brewed in medias res, and just like watching it grow and understanding it a little bit more. It's been a fun little project over the past year.
That yeast culture Eric's got is just, there's something special about that thing.
I mean, every time he like brings something new, like we just packaged Tiny House today, which is the beer, our hop harvest beer, so wet hopped saison, and it was another spontaneous culture that he brought up from his brewery, and some yeast cultures from Andrew from Yeast of Eden. And I think that's the best farmhouse beer we've ever made, like straight up. Like I think it's the best one we've made to date. And a lot of it, like I can taste Eric's like spontaneous culture, and then I'm like, this is so good. It's just so good. I don't know what is going on and what he's doing to just
ridiculous.
like get
it. There's magic in that thing. It's ridiculous.
He just brings it, Eric's milkshake brings all the yeast to the yard. His yeast shake. I hope he watches this.
I don't know where to go from there. Yay. I'm trying to figure out where to go from there. I don't know. He not only is his yeast amazing, he's amazing. He's such an awesome dude. When I taste his beers and they're just like so amazing, I'm just so happy because I'm happy that it's his beer. It's weird, right?
I'm so jealous of those California guys, and like they get to hang out with each other more frequently. I get to see them like once a year.
Well, you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It was an hour from the Connecticut airport that I flew into to get to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even like the big major city airport.
Yeah, and that airport's in the middle of nowhere too.
Yeah, it's incredible. So milkshake shit, man. We're talking about farmhouse beer. How influential is the surrounding area to the farmhouse beer, and not in like the mentality aspect, but in the, spruce tips or dandelions, or you seem to be heavily influenced by grain and your maltster.
Mm-hmm.
But does the other aspect of being out, again, I just use the same wording, in the middle of nowhere, play into your thought process on producing these beers?
Well, you want to like give, I don't know, it's such an overused term, but like a taste of place. And and trying to build a stronger sense of that. And using local grains is a great start. Using local hops is great. And then if you're able to use your own well, and just like what else can you add to like get a taste of our farm? So like, and not only limiting it to like farmhouse stuff, but we did 30 pounds of toasted maple bark in a stout this year. And it's just like, why? Because it gives a toasted marshmallow flavor to it. And just like learning, once you start doing that, you start seeing everything around you, all the nature around you in a different way. It's like, oh, what does this smell like? Would this go well with this? It's like hearing that toasted grapevines, like wine grapevines, taste like gives a hint of vanilla. And it's like, oh, well, we don't grow vanilla in Connecticut, but how can we get vanilla out of a vanilla stout or something like that in a
Cool.
unique way? And just learning how to work with our land rather than like against it, or just jumping on whatever website and then pressing order, typing in a credit card, and just having it all show up at your doorstep. The same stuff that everyone else is getting. You know, you're not building a sense of your place. But I mean, there's ways to go about it. Like, I'm not knocking that at all. But that's just not what we're doing.
Is it okay? So we're going back to the original question. I don't know if we fully answered or not, but it goes back to the why is local important question, right? Or why is terroir important? Why is expressing where you
don't use the T word.
Come on, man. Why is it important? Why is it important to, instead of ordering the shortcut, to use what you have near you, to try and create what the shortcut gives you easily?
Why do the hard thing?
Why do the hard thing? Just why do the hard thing to do it in the way that your area expresses it versus going out and bringing that hard thing in and making it easier?
I mean, you can taste the difference. I honestly think that passion and intent is tasteable. And so it adds to your story as well. Like, why, for us at Kent Falls, it's really like, why did we build a brewery in a wetland farm? Like, why would anyone want to do that? Why would I want most of our employees, or not most, but some of our employees, to live 30 minutes away, because that's where the only place that they can live is located? Like, why do we go through all these hardships? Why do we have a grain hopper rather than just dumping all the grain on the floor and just having somebody like scoop it up and throw it outside, or into a trash can and have somebody else come and pick it up? Why do we have to deal with all these things ourselves? And if we're just using the shortcuts, it just makes that question of why bigger and more looming, and then everyone loses like their sense of purpose. And we do it to support everybody and to allow people to taste our corner of Connecticut. Like, really.
Barry seems huge on that. And okay, when I went to the train with Barry, I keep talking about the trip out there, but I spent an hour in the bus with, on the way to the train in the car with Barry.
Yeah,
talking about these kinds of things, and it's kind of it's great to talk to Barry to get the insight on, or not the insight, but to see how passionate he is about keeping everything sustainable and on the farm. And for those who haven't been to Kent Falls, you've got pigs, you've got chickens, you've got a hop yard, you've got a freaking workout course out there. It's more than just the beer at Kent Falls. I mean, what we talk about is a beer, and what people probably that would watch this are going to think about as a beer, but there's more at Kent Falls than the beer. And it sounds like in all of your answers that is a huge driving force behind what happens in the beer.
Yeah.
That's it. Look at me. I'm answering the question as I'm asking it. I mean, you know, it's a, and I say that as a kind of like a point, in that you guys really are. I mean, you know, a lot of breweries can go out and talk about expressing. And we talked about Evan earlier, so I'll bring him back into the mix. But expressing their corner of the world, and our brewery will try and do that too. But you guys really are eating that up. Meaning, you're like. You're trying to grow hops. I mean, you're trying to grow as much as possible, and you're trying
to. Not really.
No,
Evan is growing things as much as possible. That's true. I think he wants to be just like an estate brewery, which is awesome and like so difficult to do.
Yeah.
We will never be an estate brewery. It's more of just supporting your local supply chain.
I interviewed Evan twice. So once before he decided that, and once after they had started that.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not trying to promote another video. I don't really care. I don't make any money off you watching the other videos.
Swipe up, click the link.
Yeah, exactly. But
click the link right here.
I love that second interview I did with Evan because and the only reason I'm mentioning this is because, as you say, it's not easy.
No, it's the hardest thing.
That comes across so he's so emotive about that in the interview that it was incredible. I felt like, wow, I captured a really cool, not a cool, but real moment for Evan as he kind of explained what he was going through with that. I mean, it's not easy. It's
no, his day starts before mine and ends like significantly after mine.
Yeah.
And it's hard enough to just brew beer, but to go along with everything else with maintaining land. Like we have a full-time farmer, and his job's hard enough during like 3 months out of the year, or 3 seasons out of the year, not months out of the year, 3 seasons out of the year. And it's like the winter is like the downtime where you can catch up on like his life, and everything else beyond that is the farm and the land and tending to that. And that's like a 12-hour day.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's incredible. But again, as you said, you can taste the purpose in that. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just amazing. It's a romantic thing about these beers that you like to produce. Who kind of inspired you to really be, not to use the same word again, but who inspired you to be inspired by these beers? I mean, are there certain producers? I mean, we've talked about Evan a whole bunch, but are there other producers, other breweries that have really kind of driven your passion for these kinds of beers?
I mean, initially and continually, it would be Hill Farmstead first and foremost, and then Dan Suarez, and just what he's been able to differentiate himself from that lineage and do it in his own way is really inspiring. I mean, there's a bunch of people doing it now that I didn't know of before that are inspiring me, like Fonta Flora. I'd never had their beer before, and then like meeting Todd and like talking to him and trying his beer, and I'm like, it's just like, this is great. Like what you're doing is great.
It's sickening.
Yeah. Bob Sylvester down near you, and has been doing it for such a long time. Like, I wish I had known of Bob, when he had first started, or when I had been 21, so I could have sought his stuff out for a lot longer. But just like going back in time, almost with tasting his stuff, where you're like, this is where I should have started. And like maybe I'll end up there. Maybe it's just we'll go full circle, and we'll just be making like French Belgian inspired clean Brett saisons or whatever. Yeah. Like, let's just do it. And then all the European producers, like, it's just great. I mean, going to the Shelton Fest, which we got to hang out a little bit, but I keep thinking about that festival and then being able to taste Cantillon and Tommy Chef against like the American producers, and just like how balanced and like delicate these beers were, and people were going crazy over it. They do. And like American producers just take things in such an extreme that the people get palate fatigue. It has to be palate fatigue. That's like a simple answer, but that's the only thing I can come up with. But with their stuff, there is such fervor for their beers. And then when you try it, you have it hyped up in your brain as an American, and you try it and you're like, this isn't like really intense in any way. There was a Chardonnay beer that Tommy Chef had made, and I like remember trying it, and I remember like hearing all this hype about this young kid who's a blender in the Netherlands, and I tried it, and I was like, yeah, it's good, but like it's just like very, very subtle. And I was just like, I had like this aha moment, and I just keep thinking about that over and over whenever I'm blending now. I'm just like, it's nuanced. It's so balanced. Like, it's just, I want to drink this all day long. Like, I love this beer. And then I went back for more just because like, I was just like, wow, like this is great. It's not offensive in any way. It's not intense in any way. The only way it is intense and is in its drinkability or its nuance. And as oxymoronic as that is, but it's
No, it's true.
it's
Did I tell you that I went and chatted with
Richard Hall.
Sean from Cantillon,
Yeah.
and what he did? Like, that was mind blowing to me. I was like, I went up to, I guess for benefit of not telling inside stories, but I went up to him and I was like, and I started talking to him. He's like, "Do you want a beer?" And I said, "Well, duh." You know, basically looked at him like, "Who's gonna say no to you? Who doesn't want a Cantillon beer poured by you, right?" I said, "What?" And he said, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, whatever you think." And he goes, "Whatever I think is a blend." I said, "Wait, you've already blended these beers." So he goes and makes a blend of the beers that he's pouring, and he pours it for me, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" I mean, this thing is, like you said, it's just nuanced, it's gorgeous, it's soft in the right spots, it's intense in the right spots, and I was like, wow. And he looks at me like, wow, really? And I said, yeah, try this, try it. And so he tries it, and he calls his son over. You gotta try this. You gotta try this. I'm like, this is amazing. This is amazing. It's so cool to see that a guy like him, who guys like you, me, I'm sure Eric, who we talked about, Evan, look up to as kind of, up there, the pinnacle, still get excited about something like that.
Yeah.
And that's for me, on a day-to-day basis, I'll drink your IPA over any of the wild beers just because that's what I drink on a day-to-day basis, But what I love and what attracts me to the beers that you're doing and other people are doing on these farmhouse style beers is that kind of playfulness, surprise, excitement of a little bit unknown, a little bit I'm making educated guesses. To me, I'm getting very geeky right now, but there's a beauty beyond the actual product to these beers. I get very excited about the fact that, okay, sure, you may not like the beer I just poured for you, but I love it because of X, Y, and Z reason, or other people will love it for their own reasons. And I think that in this style of beer, and I want to hear your take on this. I think that for this style of beer, what's so cool about it is that two people can drink the same beer, and one guy goes, okay, and then another guy can be like you or me and go, holy shit, I'm completely inspired by this.
In terms of like farmhouse ales or like,
yeah, yes.
I think
I'm more romantic, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
You seem very.
I don't know. My answer is probably more romantic than your answer.
Okay.
I think a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I think that there is a universal, like, you can reach people universally through a taste. So with like a farmhouse beer or a farm beer or whatever you want to call it, like I know there's controversy with the farmhouse title, but I think that if there is a really great beer being poured, I guess like across the style, and this if somebody has had a bad experience with that before, I think most people are going to be like, this is awesome, like, and just recognize that. Like, my dad doesn't like sour beer at all, like, whatsoever, and he's starting to develop a palate. But I took him up to Hill Farmstead a couple weeks ago, and I bought their Bay, and he had tried Anna before, had tried Arthur, and was like, yeah, it's good, but like, whatever. And he was like, this is the best beer I've ever had. And it's just like, yeah, this is the best beer I've ever had. Like, it's cool to like share that moment with him where he like doesn't have this crazy appreciation for the style like I do. And then you drink it and you're like, this is the best beer I've ever had. Like, I just know that because it tastes like the best beer I've ever had. So I think that there can be like universal appreciation for a beer.
That is pretty romantic, my friend.
Yeah.
I just love it. What do you, I guess, after all of this kind of like philosophizing. What do you see as your like go forward at Kent Falls? I mean, what are you as a head brewer trying to achieve? Whether it be in a philosophy or whether it be in a profile, or because Kent Falls is already you don't open a bad beer. You open beers that are already taste like there's purpose there. I mean, the beers are awesome. So what are you going forward? What's your goal as head brewer?
So the first thing that I did when I became head brewer was have Barry order us 10 wine barrels from a local broker and start our Saison program. So we had never done like I wouldn't call them barrel aged at this point, because they don't last long enough in the barrel to be like barrel aged, but they're like barrel kissed. But like producing grain centric farmhouse beers on a regular basis, and that's what I wanted. Like, you go to Suarez, you go to Hill Farmstead, again talking about the same people over and over, but you go there and you can always get their either country beer or their farmstead ale, like respectively. And we didn't have that. We had like clean dry hopped farmhouse beers with like a lab purchased Saison strains, and like that's fine, and they taste great and they're awesome beers, and like we will not stop making them. But like, you don't have that like 6-month beer that just like has been sitting there and developing, and like you'll put it into a bottle and it's going to turn into something completely different after like 2 years, and something that you'd see on like a tasting menu, and it's just like, here's this bottle and we made it in this purpose, and like you pour it like delicately, and like we didn't have that on a consistent basis. We had some of them, but we didn't have it on a consistent basis, and that was the first thing that I did. So Medio, which is our Emmer Saison, is the first of that.
Killer.
Yeah, I mean, it was my first attempt at it, so I was glad that it decided to come out happy, and it's tasting awesome right now. I'm really stoked on the way it's turned out. But we have buckwheat one coming out soon, and then the Triticale Dandelion Petal one, which is in the bottle, was bottled last month, about a month and a half ago, and then yours and mine is going to sit in the barrel and actually be barrel aged probably for like 9 months to a year. So it'll get like a lot more oak character. It tastes awesome, by the way. It's really good.
I'm very excited about this, by the way.
I did a sumac and rye beer. And then on top of doing all of this, like, it happened to coincide during fruit season, which is perfect because we didn't do a whole lot consistently on like a major scale of like a lot of fruit. And so we brought in like bulk fruit from specific farms, and these barrels, when they were going to be packaged, it's like, all right, well, maybe we just pull off like a little bit here, a little bit there, and then like the blending became like an actual purpose, and then adding whole fruit onto these. And so those are in the tank now, which is really, really cool. And like, that just happened to fall into my lap, but it's those are probably what I'm most excited about now. And then just consistent IPAs. People want IPAs right now, and I just want to make consistent, perfectly balanced IPAs. And just, we're pretty close at narrowing it down to like where we would want it to be. And like all of us, like I'm not the only person there, it's like all of us have palates. We all have differing palates, but like we'll find a happy medium between all of us. And it's like, this is where we want these IPAs to be, and this is what we want Kent Falls to taste like when somebody drinks an IPA. So we're pretty close to figuring that out. And then the crispiest of lagers in the entire state, like, I want to take a beer to Dan Suarez and have him be like, "Oh yes, like you brought that. Like, I'm excited to drink this." Or going up to Hill and just like dropping off a Danny boy, and being like, "Oh cool, like can't wait." That's all I want. And to figure out these stupid dark beers, like what's up with that? What's up with these dark beers? I don't know.
You know what it is? us down here in Florida have the water for it, you know?
No, I think it's not enough AC up here. I think that's what I think that's where it is. That's where the secret lies.
It sounds like Kent. That sounds like if you have your way, Kent Falls becomes much more embracing of its farmhouse nature.
Yeah, I mean, they did a great job. You know, Barry and Derek initially, like one of the first beers that was. I mean, the first beers that were made were definitely farmhouse beers, but like, you can't just live alone on just like farmhouse beers right now. Especially being more in the middle of nowhere than anywhere else at Kent Falls. But they did a great job of starting the Cool Ship program, and that's something that not a lot of people are doing or were doing 4 years ago when this place started up. Of like, hey, we're gonna do Cool Ships, like day one. Here we go, and so we came out with a 3-year blend already, which is amazing. We're gonna start coming up with our next 3-year blend.
You guys had that at Shelton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that beer's.
It's cool.
It's pretty good.
But that's another thing that's like dark beer for me, where I'm just like, I don't understand it. Like, this tastes terrible, and then all of a sudden, like, it's really good, and you're like, what just happened? Like, why did that happen? I don't what.
Is there a pastry stout future in the farmhouse brewery of Kent Falls?
No, we'll never do a pastry stout. We do have an imperial stout that is pastry-esque, but it's not a pastry stout.
All right. Well, look, we've been to your past, we've been to your present, been to your future. Is there anything else? Is there anything else that you think you want to leave us with? Let me leave you with something. I'm very excited about what you're doing at Kent Falls. It's awesome. I'm glad that for one day and however long it sits in the barrel, I was a part of that with you. I'm honored to have been part of that because what you guys are doing is really, really awesome. I love your vision. I love Barry's vision of really embracing local, showcasing local, supporting local, and standing behind ideals and philosophy. I'm glad I'm glad that we had this chat, and I was able to bring back after 2 years this interview series with a really great friend of mine in you. We've been talking for just over an hour and a half. And that's pretty awesome because it kind of went by quickly. And it's cool to see that. It's cool to see the mentality of someone brewing on an actual farm. And I love that you kind of made a joke about the farmhouse controversy when talking about because when we were talking about Bob earlier, he's kind of taken taking some stances on that himself, and I absolutely adore that guy too. But this has been awesome, man, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit through this conversation. Not sit through the conversation, but be a part of this conversation. And I hope and I think people will appreciate it as well. So on that note, anything?
No, man, thanks for reviving Craft Commander because I kept bugging you to put me on this stupid thing.
Well, it's not stupid, okay?
Well, I don't know. I haven't watched any of these, so I'll just watch this one over and over because I'm an egotist.
You've asked me like 50 times to be on, and you haven't watched it once.
Yeah, I read like You didn't ask me the 10 questions. I'm a little disappointed in that, but
We can
overall,
do that too. Okay, we
no,
can do it.
oh
Did
yeah,
Eric, did Eric get 10? I don't think Eric got 10 questions. I think I just interviewed Eric. We should
yeah.
do. We'll do 10 questions with you, so you have
Let's
one.
just bring it all back, dude. Let's just bring the whole thing back.
Let's do it. Let's do. We should do 3-way interviews with you also.
Yeah, just bring me on as like a co-host, and I'll just sit
Yeah.
here and not ask any questions. But I'll just be like, why didn't you send me any beer? How am I supposed to participate the whole time?
Hey, that might work.
I'd be like, joke's on you. I only drink tea at night. I don't even drink beer.
Every once in a while, you cough just so the camera flips to your screen.
Yes, I'm in. Well, hopefully people watch this or are watching this or. Happens.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Everybody, it's been great. Zach, I love you, buddy. And everybody, maybe there'll be another one soon. I don't know. It might happen if Zach joins. If not, it's not going to happen. So if there's no more interviews and you're upset about that, blame Zach.
Yeah.
On that note,
all right.
hasta luego.
Love you guys.